The following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Hello there, family. Welcome to You Plant, We Water. I am your girl, Dr. Toy Flowers, licensed professional counselor with a specialization in couples and families and a professor of counseling. And my distinguished and lovely co-host.
I'm Trisha Flowers. I am a minister and a lifestyle coach.
Yes, and here on this corner of the world, we focus on talking about our faith and spirituality, as well as mental health and specifically relationships, how to help you have that thriving, healthy relationship that God has called you to. And we do this by keying in on expert tips, professional advice, and guidance. And we like to say we cover the 3 Ps, the petty, professional, and prophetic. So having said that, our topic for today, we're talking about the importance of empathy and emotional support in couple relationships. I think it's an interesting topic because I think we often overlook that it's important. Even me as a counselor, I'm like, I had to double check, like, well, why is it important? I know what it is, but why is it important in a couple relationship? So we'll start there. First, let's define empathy as we typically do. So we all know that we're talking about the same thing when we use this word empathy. Trish, as a minister and life coach, when you hear empathy, what comes to mind?
It means putting yourself in another person's position. So being able to really feel what another person is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Or feeling, not necessarily. You don't really know about what they're thinking, but
No.
you do know what they're feeling.
You got a superpower. Exactly, right? So it sounds like a big word, but at the end of the day, that is what empathy means. Remember back in the day when you were growing up and maybe your mom or your grandma would say, what do you think it feels like to be them? That's empathy, right? Trying to imagine what it is like to literally go through life in someone else's shoes. Now, you're probably looking at it for that moment. I would say for us as counselors, we use this term, we're trying to understand their view of the world, right? So all of your life experiences shape, the Bible says the eyes, well, I don't know, but our eyes are our lens, our key to our soul, right? And the way we view the world is shaped by all of our experiences, both good and bad. And so when we're trying to understand another person's experience or empathize with them, that's really all we're doing, is trying to imagine what it's like to be them. Well, when it comes to a couple relationship, ultimately what we're asking you to do is to try to imagine what it's like to be your partner in a given moment, right? So maybe you're in a conflict, maybe you're not, maybe you want to surprise them, but you empathize all the time when you're trying to think, I don't know. Today I went and got a steak sandwich and I asked, do you want me to get you one? That was empathy. Like, I wonder if they're hungry, right? Like, that's empathy. So we were doing a little research, trying to see what gets confusing about empathy. And there's this other word out there, sympathy, right? And Trish, you had a great point, right? What's the difference between empathy and sympathy?
And I didn't know the answer to that, so I'm going to.
That's real. Hello to all our viewers who are saying hi. We appreciate you. Thank you. Please continue to share in the comments. Right. And I didn't either. It took a long time. Here's being really petty. It took a long time in graduate school to really understand the difference between empathy and sympathy. But ultimately, sympathy does not require as much depth and knowledge of the person. Sympathy is when you feel sorry for someone, right? So when there's a loss, we extend our deepest sympathy. I do feel sorry that you've lost someone, right? But to empathize would mean I am actively trying to feel the pain that you are feeling, right? I'm trying to imagine what that loss is doing to you. And if I were doing that, I might more than empathize, I might cry, right? Because if I'm really trying to, I would begin to think, man, what would it be like if, I don't know, my grandma had just passed? I love my grandma. Man, I bet they're deeply hurting. So that's really kind of different. Sympathy doesn't require the same level of depth, but it's when we feel sorry or remorse that someone is going through something. And empathy is when we try to walk in their shoes.
So sympathy is more an acknowledgement of a hurt or a situation versus empathy is actually trying to place yourself in the feeling and the mindset of the other person.
Very well said. Now, how this comes in relationships, you typically will get irritated with your partner when you are expressing a deep emotion and they give you sympathy because you want to feel understood and seen. You don't want them to be like, sorry, it sucks to be you, right? You want them to really like, hey, man, I can't imagine how hurt you are that your boss disrespected you in front of everybody. If it were me, I would be fuming. You don't want them to just be like, rough day for you. So it can be fuel on a fire if you just get sympathy instead of empathy. Although it's better than nothing.
It's a start.
Right? If you can only do one of the simp or imps, just do one. I just made that up, simp or imp.
Come into a shirt near you. No, I'm just playing.
Along with petty, pathetic, and professional. Okay, so that's what we mean by empathy, right? And I've been more recently using this analogy of almost like if you were an actor or an actress and you had been given the role or the part, like you get to play your partner. What I love about actors and actresses, they do all this research, right? Sometimes they'll sit with, they're doing like a biopic. They'll sit with a real person just to, see what they do on a daily basis. How do they talk to their children, right? Also, they can embody that person. That's empathy. All right, so why does it matter, right? Why do I have to understand my partner's worldview? Why do I got to walk in their shoes? Who cares? They're them, I'm me. What's the big deal? Should I just go for it, Trish, or do you want to say anything before I start?
No, I just think that this is a great topic and it helps you to define, because a lot of times we do things and we're not sure what it's called. So that's why it's good to go into these topics and learn really what's going on, because I didn't know with sympathy. This is why I'm a little frustrated. Like, I didn't ask you to be sorry. I asked you to understand when I was upset about what was going on or when I was happy. It doesn't have to be a negative trait. Like, you don't have to be mad. It could be, I'm really excited and things are going well, and you can empathize. Like, I know, I'm so proud of you.
Oh my gosh. Yes, right. And that kind of support, somebody who really is genuinely happy for you when you win, that goes a long way. And that's like a glue that can hold couples together. So very well said. Okay. Why does it matter? How does it help? The ability to develop empathy for your partner helps on many levels. One, it leads to intimacy. It's good for conflict resolution, and it's kind of like a golden key for communication. Those are just a few of the things. But can you imagine if you were in relationship with someone who was giving their 100% effort and trying to understand what life is like for you, and you were doing the same for them? man, you'll be winning, right? Like, because you'd be putting that person's as a priority, and maybe sometimes even before yourself.
Oh, hold on.
Right. Okay. So we're gonna talk about empathy, which and emotional support. I'm gonna ask you to shush. I'm going off. I'm going rogue here. But I think the what do I want to say? The belief, whether it's true or not, is that empathy and emotional support is easier for women than it is for men. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But I think that comes from early on, boys are trained and conditioned to shut off their emotions. All right. And this is just my thinking. I have two sons, and I remember very early on, I mean, they're still babies, maybe like two, or maybe younger than that, maybe like one. And immediately, cut your finger and they're getting the feedback. Don't cry, right? Because you're a boy. But little girl got the same cut. They both bleed, but one can cry and one can't.
I do think that society standards impede on emotional health. And to take it a step further, I think that your culture and your ethnicity does as well. It shows up differently. So, for instance, with Latinos, they have a thing where the men are super macho, right? So,
Machismo.
yes. And so
Mhm.
that affects them differently. And in the Black culture as well, we are trained not so much the machismo, but you have to be tough. You don't show that you're going to cry because that's a weakness. And a part of it is true, but it shouldn't have to be that way. And, on top of that, young Black men that are boys are treated harshly because of that. So that toughening up thing, it makes us lack empathy.
It does, right? And I get it. It may be necessary to survive in society. Yes. Yes, Lloyd Kohler. It is confusing and misunderstood in conversation and in practice. So great comment. Um, but I think this piece about men being cut off or detached from their emotions, that's where it comes from. And it really doesn't, well, I shouldn't say that. Where it'll show up in a harmful way is in their couple relationship. Because this is the one place you need to be able to tap into emotion. You not only do you not know your own emotion, you got to be able to imagine what it's like for this emotional creature that God has gifted you with. You got to walk in her emotional shoes. Like that could be a lot when you learn how to check out from emotion. So I say all that to say have you heard about masculine and feminine energy? Well, I don't know how ladies are gonna feel it, but I've heard part of the feminine energy in the role is to help those with a masculine energy, one, to understand their own emotions, to know like, oh, when something's coming up for them, you might even have to label it like, oh, babe, that's anxiety, right? Because they may not know. Real life story. I had a male client come to me. His wife said, "You've got to go to counseling." And I said, "Okay." I'm working with him, and I'm like, "Well, what are we here to do?" And he said, "My wife sent me here because she said I need to learn the language of emotions." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, what do you mean by that?" And he was like, "I just don't understand them. I don't speak emotion." He was like, "I'm a engineer." No, he was a computer processor, and I don't get it. I was like, "Okay, well." We're going to tackle emotions just like data entry, computer processing, and each little thing. I'd be like, "What do you feel in your stomach right now?" He's like, "I feel, butterflies." I'm like, "Okay, that's nervous." Like I had to explain every emotion.
And one of the viewers said, "Help us, fellas." And we are. So we are empathizing. Although we are not males, we understand that it's a struggle, right? We understand that sometimes it's not a safe space, right? So why would I share my empathy with someone and I'm going to, as we said, get a petty moment? You share and you're telling me all of this, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, so why would you want to share that? So that's something that we have to be aware of making a safe space for both people, not just male or female. It needs to be a safe place.
Absolutely, right? And again, we're going to talk about it and why it matters because this is where now intimacy is that connection, right? That's the thing it's the glue, the bond that keeps you close. If you think about the word intimacy, it's into me, see. Like I'm going to try to see into you, you're going to try to see into me. And then that makes us close. It's not just like sex or anything like that. Now, here are 3 ways that, and I'll let you look at this, Trisha. I'll cover the first one. Empathy helps with emotional intimacy. It's going to deepen your emotional bonds and understanding and strengthen the relationship satisfaction, right? Because oftentimes, and I was talking with somebody earlier today. This is a tricky one. Oftentimes, especially with women, when they come to you upset, something happened, men are fixers, right? When she says, "Oh my gosh, I don't know, I'm so overwhelmed. I got so many things coming up this month. I don't know what I'm going to do." Men are fixers. They're like, "Okay, let's get to it. Let's make it happen." But often, she just wants to be heard. She may not need you to fix it. And if she wants to be heard, that means she wants empathy. She wants to hear you say, "Yeah, that does sound like a lot. I'm impressed that you handling it all, babe." Right? But men might go to, "Well, just do one thing at a time and get it done." Right? So this is how it strengthens the bond and deepens the connection, because you are trying to show I see you, and vice versa. For women, this is what I was going to say before. Because men don't have a lot of safe spaces to be emotional, you're it oftentimes. In female relationships, we could be emotional with our sister, with our girlfriend. We could be like, "Girl, I'm so." Men, not necessarily. They might not be able to go to their homeboy and be like, "I'm so hurt because blah, blah, blah." So you might be that only space. And so how you open it and nurture it, right? How you water it is essential.
And the next one is conflict resolution. Facilitate mutual understanding and cooperation. Reduces misunderstandings and fosters harmony. And communication promotes open.
Are you on a different one? Is
Is
that the second and
This
third?
the second one. Conflict.
Conflict resolution. Yes. Why does it to be helping conflict resolution? This is where the petty comes in. When you are in a dispute with your other person, you probably, not always, but sometimes we're trying to win. I don't care what your point of view is. What I know is you are upsetting me. You're making me mad. I feel disrespected. I feel hurt. So I'm going to win, right? I'm going to mollywop you. Like, "Oh, yeah, you want to go?" I have literally said this. "You want to go?" Right? Obviously, I'm not empathizing. If I'm saying, "Oh, you want to go?" We could go. I'm in my pettiness, right? But if you in that same moment and you think, "Yeah, I don't like the way they're talking to me. I wonder what it's like for them right now. I wonder why, I feel like he's snapping. What maybe he feels disrespected." That's gonna soften the conflict. And then you could approach it like, "Okay, he might be feeling disrespected." I could say, instead of "You want to go," I might say, "You know what? Are you feeling disrespected? Because I never meant to disrespect you." That's why it's really powerful. Conflict resolution.
And on top of this, so like she said, my nephews are her sons. And when they were overwhelmed and frustrated because we had a lot going on and things like that, one of the things that she mentioned was, "I wonder if they're hungry." And they were, and that was making them quite the pranksters. And so that's a small empathy thing, right? So it might be a struggle for you to be able to put yourself in. But I know for myself, when I'm hungry, for me, it's sleep
Yes.
deprived. I'm a horrible person. I'm not nice. I'm not kind. And so if you're able to know these things about your mate, of course you're going to soften up. And you might not have to go to, what is your favorite term? You want to go? You might go and go get the food. So you can minimize some of that tension. And who doesn't like a good nap, some food, a shower? You don't have to find all of that energy in conflicting energy. You can minimize it once you learn this skill, and it really does work.
Yeah. And I know some of this stuff we're saying is easier said than done, especially when you are in the heat of the moment. But they do say, if two people are arguing, especially if you're having an intense argument, that means there are two people that care. Because when you really don't care, you just feel like, So even that little knowledge, like, okay, they really going here with me. If you be like, okay, they care. That's right. Just like the commercials. Time for a Snickers. Or get in there and fix them a sandwich. I'm sorry. Any little Hello. People say hello.
The Snickers is really what it's taking us to a place. And the sandwich.
Well, 'cause I'm sweating. Okay. The third one, communication, right? So empathy helps because it promotes an open and honest dialogue, and it builds trust and emotional safety, right? So all of this is just to say that when we're in relationships, we often are thinking from our own perspective only, right? I feel unappreciated. That's a very common one. And you may be being unappreciated. But if we take a second to imagine, well, what's going on in my partner's life? Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they got a lot going on at work. Maybe that's why I'm being unappreciated or whatever. Then it's going to just soften the approach. And if they're doing the same for you, like I said, y'all winning, right? But it's harder to do. I'm still learning how to be. Michelle, thanks for Trace. Any thoughts, Trish, about empathy or emotional support? Why it's important? How we could do it? What
Yeah.
or what might be a barrier? Whatever comes.
Well, what comes to mind is being like Christ. He was very empathetic, right?
Oh my.
So he was able to feel what other people were feeling, and he never experienced it. He was out without sin. So why would he care about the sinners if he was without sin and he was
Yes.
going to go where we all want to go? But why? And that's the thing. If you can be Christ-like in your relationships, even in conflict, it is very hard. So I'm not telling you this is an easy task, but personally, that helped me, right? So if God can give his only son for sinners, right? And we're worried about what I'm going to get. I didn't get this. I'm stressed out or whatever. How selfish is it of us, right? So that's the ultimate empathy. That is the goal. That's what we should be trying to be able to do and helping other people. And that's why Jesus was able to help so many people. He knew how to empathize.
Won't he do?
That's the prophetic part.
That's the prophetic. And the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Right. So if you imagine what you want, do it to others. But often, what happens in couple relationships, we are fighting so desperately to have our own needs met that we just can't or won't empathize or even sympathize with our partner, who, if we can manage this skill, thanks, thanks before, it is contagious. But if we can come together and try to empathize, it will make a world of difference. The last little pieces I'm going to leave you with, as far as emotional support, we talked about some things that may be myths or stereotypes, but the truth is, I don't care who you are, male, female, whatever, everybody needs emotional support, right? Whether they recognize it or not. It is connection to another human being is as important as oxygen, right? Which is why when people become socially isolated, or back in the day when they would, what's that called? They would, I forgot, they would send somebody out, not ostracized, but you would get in trouble, exiled. You get exiled, and where you'd have to go somewhere all by yourself. That was like a death, because without human connection, you will die. So we all need this, and however you find a way to start practicing it, go for it, right? Try it out. Tonight, tomorrow, that next argument, when you like, you know what, I could wring their neck. Think, I wonder what it's like for them in this moment. Church, that reminds, Jesus was angry, but he did not sin. Yes, absolutely. And we got many examples of him being angry. Like he flipped them tables over. He was not a happy camper.
Rightfully so, though.
Exactly.
He was rightfully angry, and that's the part. But he still empathized. He still had compassion.
Yes, righteous indignation, right? There was one piece I wanted to mention about abuse, right? Domestic violence. So there is something, and a lot of times it's because of a lack of empathy that somebody can be abusive to you. Because what will happen in a relationship like that is something that's called negative sentiment override, right? That's what we call it in my field. Basically, what it means is the person is unable to think of anything positive about you, right? And this happens typically only in abusive relationships. And I can tell when I'm asking a client, what made you fall in love with each other? Now I'm telling them to go back, and I'll be able to tell because they won't be able to say anything. They'll be like, like they're so detached from empathizing with the person that they see them as an object of negativity. So empathy helps counteract that, right? So it is essential. All right, I think we've covered this enough. We've drilled it into your brains and minds. I said mains, so whatever. But we thank you for joining us. We'd like to thank our executive producer, Bishop Lloyd Kohler. We'd like to mention that his church, Mission Covenant Church, is having a grand reopening this Palm Sunday at 3:00 p.m. There's going to be praise, celebration, testimonies. It's going to be fantastic. So if you can make it, please do. That's Mission Covenant Church in Blue Island. And I think that is about everything. So remember, you plant, we water. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.
Go to your Apple or Google Play Store and download the WVTC Gospel Radio app today. You can also say, Alexa, play WVTC Radio Skills.
Would you like to play WVTC Radio Network?
Absolutely. Download it today.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communication Station.